Jack Gadd of Soltar Solutions, and I'm here today on Focus Forward with Penny Isaac Nelson, and we're going to be talking about the difference between nonprofit and for-profit when it comes to project management. Thanks so much for being here today, Penny.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here, Lori.
Well, now tell us about this difference between profit, for-profit, and nonprofit in the project management world.
Yeah, well, you know, for-profits are very used to the term project management. They're probably very used to working with project managers. Some may have them even on their team, or they outsource that service when they don't have enough staff to do it. A nonprofit, for them, that term is maybe a little foreign, might not be a concept that they think about using or think about that kind of person or the person with those skills could come on board and really help them get some of their big projects done. And when I say project, I'm really talking about something that's out of the ordinary for them. So anything they do day to day, that really isn't a project. But perhaps maybe they've got a big fundraiser coming up, or they're doing something special with volunteers, or they need to train them, or they need a process to work with new volunteers. Just examples. And so those would be projects. There's a beginning and an end, and then you're done with it.
So do they use a different term for project management, or are they not thinking in terms of project management?
Yeah, I think they're not thinking in terms of it. I don't think that concept is something that pops right into the head of a person who leads a nonprofit. They're just not used to thinking in those terms or using that term when they're thinking about how can I get something done. What happens when my staff is overworked and overloaded, and who could I tap into to come in for that short period of time to help us get something done?
And how do they actually get these things done? If they have a staff that's already on overload, how do they get it done?
Well, they don't. That's the problem. They don't. And so, or they overwork staff even more. I think in the nonprofit world especially, people wear a lot of hats, very similar to a small business. Everybody's trying to save money, and you're trying to spend your donations wisely. And so if we can add a little more to somebody, then we don't have to hire. And so sometimes that works. Sometimes somebody has capacity, but a lot of times they don't. Or they've got to pull you off if you're the person on staff. Stop doing what you're doing, Lori, because now I need you to go do this. So either it just doesn't get done, or you have to add Lori's job to somebody else. So there's kind of that cat and mouse about robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, to be able to get some of those big things done.
So maybe before we get deeper into this, maybe we can look at what are the functions that a project manager would have in a nonprofit, and then maybe we can determine from there if you would need one.
Right, yeah. Well, project manager, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, really has the same function. And so this is a person who would come on to your team for a set amount of time and help you identify your strategy to get to the end result. What are the goals of the project? What are you trying to get done? They will be the person that will be kind of the gatekeeper to keep everybody focused and really help that nonprofit get done the thing that they really need to. And for a lot of nonprofits, it's always attached to their mission. When we think of nonprofit, I think a lot of us think an organization that has some kind of social cause. That's probably the most common type of nonprofit. There are other types as well, but people are just very excited and very passionate about whatever that social cause is, and getting that project done, helping them do that even better, is always a win for them.
Well, that's great examples, I think. But one of the things I'm curious about, I know if a business would hire a project manager, they would probably have staff.
Right.
So for a nonprofit, if they bring in a project manager, might that project manager be kind of hurting volunteers and getting volunteers to be pulling that project together?
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably one of the biggest differences between a for-profit and nonprofit situation. Nonprofits thrive and run on volunteer support and volunteer time, and they're just what makes an organization tick. So they're very important for that organization in accomplishing their mission. So any project you would want, it would be a mistake to do a project without some key volunteers being a part of that team. You just have to have the right people who are not only passionate about the cause with that organization, but also who have some strategic skill and that kind of get it done factor, so they can be an active member of the team and contribute.
Well, that's great. Because that's always what I think about volunteers and getting volunteers in line. And what's the best way to get volunteers to actually bring the project in? What are kind of some of the ways that you go about doing that?
I think the best way is to lean on either the board that's attached to the organization or the executive director or the other leadership. They're going to know better than the project manager who are those key players, who, as I said, is passionate, but you want people that have some skill to accomplish the project, get the job done. They're working on their own deadlines. Everybody has a piece of the project. And so you've got to have people that are the kind of people that can get stuff done.
Well, that sounds like it's quite a large scope of, whatever the project is. Because with employees, I mean, there's definitely a reason to get in line and do those things, their paycheck, their job, benefits, all that. But with volunteers, sometimes I think that there's specific challenges involved with that.
Yeah, there are. Volunteers can be very passionate and very exuberant about the mission and what the organization is doing. And I think a really good project manager will kind of harness that and help them get to the direction that they want to get to at the end.
So what are the tips that you could give for a nonprofit? Maybe some ideas on what to look at to find out if they would in fact need a project manager.
I guess I'd put it in the form of questions.
Okay.
So the first question I would ask is and I would be talking to the leadership, when you go to bed at night, what are the things that keep you awake? What are the problems that you're trying to solve? And can you frame them in terms of a project that has a beginning and an end that you could bring somebody in to work on? Everybody's got things that they just never get to. And so I would ask that question, like, what are those things that you don't get to? And then what would be the win for your organization if you could? If you had different things to think about when you went to bed that kept you up at night, it wasn't the thing you've been trying to get done for 6 months or 2 years. Those are all really key factors in determining if having a project manager would help your organization move forward.
What do you think the one major reason is that nonprofits don't hire project managers?
I think that it probably has to do with finances, I would guess. However, what I would say is the nonprofits I've worked with is having an outside project manager come in is actually more cost effective because you're not making a long-term employment commitment. You're not promising somebody 20 hours a week, and then in order to stop that, you'd have to lay them off or let them go. Nobody wants to be in that position. So a project manager not only gets you a good result, if you have the right one, but it also will save you some of those long-term employment costs that you might enter into.
So I think the takeaway is don't be penny wise and dollar foolish. Hire somebody to really bring that project in, and that way you get your organization moving further.
And hire somebody who's just as passionate about your work, your mission, your nonprofit, or working with nonprofits as you are. You don't. I think it's a bonus if your project manager has that. They're not just gifted at managing and doing the tasks, but they've got some of that heart behind it too.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
You've given us great information. I'm Lori Flaquette of Soltar Solutions, and thanks so much for tuning in today. My guest, Penny Isaac Nelson, was telling us all about project management for nonprofits. So thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great day.